There is a moment, and most people have lived it. Even if they've never said it out loud, a moment where you look at your own life and barely recognize it, where the person staring back at you in the mirror feels like a stranger, where exhaustion isn't just in your body, it's in your soul. Maybe you built something, a version of yourself, and somewhere along the way, it collapsed. Maybe life did what life always does. It broke you without asking permission. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. Maybe you just drifted, slowly, quietly, until you woke up one day and realized you'd been living on autopilot for years. If any part of that landed, stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you is not a motivational speech. It is not a list of habits that will fix you in 30 days. What I'm about to share with you is a system built not by modern self-help gurus or social media philosophers, but by three men who had every reason to fall apart and chose not to: Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. And today we are going to rebuild mind, body, soul. 7 brutal, honest, life-changing rules. Let's begin. Welcome to Wisdom of the Stoics, where ancient philosophy meets the real, raw challenges of modern life. If you're new here, I'm glad you found this. And if you've been with us for a while, you already know what this channel is about. We don't do surface level, we go deep. Today is going to be one of those deep ones. Before we get into rule number 1, I want to ask you something. And I want you to actually think about it, not just scroll past it. What part of yourself have you abandoned? Your discipline, your peace of mind, your physical body, your sense of purpose? Keep that answer somewhere in your chest as we move through these 7 rules, because by the end of this video, I think you're going to understand, not just intellectually, but in your gut, why the Stoics believed that rebuilding yourself is not only possible, it is your duty. Rule number 1, burn the old story. Rule number 1, and I'm calling it exactly what it is. Burn the old story. Now, here's what I mean by that. Every single one of us is walking around with a narrative about ourselves. A story we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve, and crucially, what happened to us. I've always been this way. I'm not the kind of person who can do that. After everything I've been through, this is just who I am now. Sound familiar? The Stoics had a word for this kind of thinking. They called it fantasia, the impression, the mental image we construct of reality and then fatally mistake for reality itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, a journal. Remember, that was never meant to be published. A man writing to himself at the end of brutal days, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here is what most people miss when they read that quote. They think it's about control. It's not about control, it's about authorship. The Stoics understood something that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to. The story you tell about your past determines the trajectory of your future, not the events themselves. The story about the events. Let me give you an example that might hit closer to home than you expect. 2 people go through a painful divorce. Same legal process. Same loss, same grief. One person tells themselves, "I wasted years of my life. I'm damaged. I don't know who I am anymore." The other person tells themselves, "That relationship revealed something important about what I need. This is the beginning of something I couldn't have reached without going through this." Same event. 2 completely different trajectories. That is not toxic positivity. That is not pretending the pain didn't happen. That is what the Stoics called reframing, and it is the foundational act of every single rebuilding journey. Epictetus, the man who was born a slave, who was literally tortured by his master, who had his leg broken and reportedly looked at his tormentor calmly and said, "You are going to break it." That man wrote, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." He wasn't dismissing pain. He lived more pain than most of us will ever know. He was saying, the story is the lever, and the story is the one thing that is always in your hands. So here is your first brutal assignment if you're serious about rebuilding. Identify the story you've been using as a prison. What narrative have you repeated so many times that it's calcified into an identity? Write it down, look at it, And then ask the Stoic question, is this story true, or is it merely familiar? Because familiar and true are not the same thing, and the Stoics knew that the most dangerous prison is the one you build inside your own mind, because it has no visible walls. Rule number 2, make peace with your mortality, then use it. Rule number 2, and this one makes people uncomfortable. Good. The Stoics were obsessed with death, not in a morbid, nihilistic way, in a clarifying way. They had a practice, a daily, almost ritualistic practice, called memento mori. Remember that you will die. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Think about the weight of that sentence. You could leave life right now, not as a threat, not as a source of anxiety, as a lens. Here's the question the Stoics were really asking when they practiced memento mori. If you knew, genuinely knew, felt it in your bones, that your time here was finite and unpredictable, would you spend it the way you spent yesterday? Would you hold on to that grudge? Would you keep postponing the thing that matters most to you? Would you keep performing a version of yourself that isn't really you? For most people, the honest answer is no, I wouldn't. And yet, we act as though we have unlimited time. We procrastinate our real lives. We defer our healing. We say, I'll deal with that eventually, as if eventually is guaranteed. Seneca, the philosopher who wrote with the urgency of a man who knew exactly how little time he had, wrote one of the most devastating sentences in all of ancient philosophy. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. He wasn't talking about productivity. He wasn't talking about optimization. He was talking about presence. We live in the most distracted era in human history, and the Stoics, somehow, from 2,000 years ago, diagnosed our exact disease. We are not short on time. We are short on intentionality. Now here's where this becomes a tool for rebuilding. When you make peace with your mortality, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality, something profound happens. Your priorities clarify with a sharpness that no life coach can manufacture. The things that seemed urgent stop feeling urgent. The things that seemed too scary to attempt stop feeling so frightening, because the alternative to attempting them is running out of time having never tried. There is a story, possibly apocryphal, but powerful regardless, of a Roman general who, when he won a great military triumph and paraded through Rome to the cheers of thousands, had a slave standing behind him in his chariot, whispering into his ear, memento mori. Remember you will die, not to destroy the joy of the moment, but to sharpen it, to make it real, to prevent the general from becoming drunk on ego and losing sight of what actually mattered. That is the second rule. Remember that you will die, and let that memory rebuild you. Because when you truly internalize your finitude, you stop wasting your days on things that don't matter. And you start, sometimes for the first time, actually living. Tell me in the comments right now, and I genuinely want to know this. What is the one thing you've been putting off that, if you truly remembered your mortality, you would start today? Drop it below. You might inspire someone else in this community who needed to see exactly that. Rule number 3, discipline your body to free your mind. Rule number 3, and this is where it gets physical. Here is something the Stoics understood that modern wellness culture often gets exactly backwards. You cannot rebuild your mind if you have abandoned your body. They are not separate. They never were. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, arguably the most powerful man on earth during his reign, was known to rise before dawn, to train, to endure physical hardship deliberately, not because he was forced to, but because he understood something fundamental. The body is not the enemy of the philosophical life. It is the foundation of it. Epictetus put it bluntly, and Epictetus was always blunt. First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Notice that. Do what you have to do. Not what you feel like doing. Not what's comfortable. What you have to do. Now I want to address something here, because I know this is going to land differently for different people watching this. Some of you are physically rebuilding alongside everything else. Some of you have been through illness, injury, burnout, and the body you're working with is not the body you used to have. The Stoics would not shame you for that. They would tell you this: the discipline is not about the result of the physical act. It is about the act of doing it anyway. Because here is what happens in your mind when you do something hard, consistently, deliberately, even something small. You build evidence for yourself. Every time you do the thing you said you would do, wake up at the time you set, do the walk you planned, prepare the meal instead of ordering the easy option, you are casting a vote for a new identity. And identity, as the Stoics knew, is not what you declare. It is what you demonstrate, to yourself first, and then to the world. Seneca wrote, "Hang on to your physical self. Make sure food and drink are taken for the sake of health, not pleasure." Again, the Stoics were not ascetics for the sake of suffering. They were disciplined for the sake of clarity. Here is a pattern I want you to notice in your own life, and I genuinely encourage you to be honest with yourself about this right now. When your body is neglected, when you're undersleeping, undermoving, eating things that drain you, how sharp is your thinking? How resilient is your emotional state? How much do you trust yourself to make good decisions? Probably not very much. And conversely, think about a time when you were genuinely taking care of your body. When you were sleeping well, moving every day, eating in a way that felt nourishing. How different did your mind feel? How much clearer were your thoughts? How much more capable did you feel of handling difficulty? There it is. The body is the hardware on which the mind runs. Neglect the hardware long enough, and the software, no matter how sophisticated, begins to fail. The Stoic rule is this: treat your body as a tool in service of a life well lived. Not a trophy, not a temple of vanity, a tool. Maintain it, train it, respect it. Push it reasonably and consistently. Not to look good for other people, to think clearly enough to live well. Rule number 4, kill what you cannot control. Obsess over what you can. Rule number 4, and I'll tell you right now, this one changes everything. When you actually internalize it, at the absolute core of Stoic philosophy, the heartbeat beneath everything else is a single, deceptively simple distinction. There are things within your control, and there are things outside your control. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, and Epictetus placed it on the very first page of the Enchiridion, his handbook for life, as if to say, get this wrong and nothing else matters. He wrote, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Simple words, radical application. Here's where most of us go wrong, and I include myself in this. Because this is not abstract for me. We spend the majority of our mental and emotional energy on things we cannot control. What other people think of us, the economy, our past decisions, other people's behavior, the news, social media algorithms, whether someone replies to our message, whether our efforts get recognized. And we spend a fraction of our energy on the things we actually can control, our response to events, our habits, our words, our effort, our attention, our values, our character. The Stoics would look at modern life with its 24-hour news cycle, its social media, its relentless comparison culture, and they would say, you have built the most sophisticated anxiety machine in human history, and you spend your entire day feeding it. And they wouldn't be wrong. Marcus Aurelius dealt with plagues, wars, political betrayals, family tragedy, and an empire that seemed perpetually on the edge of collapse. And yet the meditations, written during those years, reveal not a man consumed by chaos, but a man practicing daily the discipline of returning his focus to what was within his sphere. He wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Cut through everything. Cut through the debate, the hand-wringing, the endless analysis paralysis. Be one. Here is the rebuilding exercise embedded in this rule. Take a piece of paper, right now if you can, and draw a line down the middle. On the left, everything you are currently worried about, anxious about, or spending mental energy on. On the right, only the things from that list that are actually, genuinely within your power to change or influence. Look at how the columns compare. For most people, and again I include myself in this, the left column is enormous. The right column is small, specific, actionable. The Stoic practice is to aggressively move your attention from the left column to the right column. Not once, not as a resolution, as a daily discipline, as a practice you return to every single morning. Because anxiety, true, chronic, depleting anxiety, is almost always the result of pouring energy into the left column, while neglecting the right one. You cannot control the storm. You can always choose how you stand inside it. Rule number 5. Embrace voluntary hardship. Rule number 5. And this is the one that most people in the modern world find the strangest. The Stoics practiced something they called ascesis, voluntary self-denial, deliberate discomfort, not because they were masochists, not because they believed suffering was inherently noble, but because they understood a truth that comfort culture desperately does not want you to hear. If you cannot endure discomfort, discomfort will always control you. Seneca practiced it. He would periodically eat the simplest food possible, coarse bread, water, even though as a wealthy Roman he had access to every luxury. He would sleep on a hard floor. He would wear rough clothing in cold weather. And he wrote about why. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Read that again. Is this the condition that I feared? He was exposing the lie at the heart of anxiety, about loss, the fear that if the comfortable things were taken away, we would not be able to survive. And by voluntarily experiencing that discomfort in a controlled setting, he was training himself to know, not believe, but know that he could survive it. Here is what voluntary hardship does to the mind and body. And this is not mysticism. This is biochemistry and psychology meeting ancient wisdom. When you deliberately choose discomfort, when you are the one initiating the hard thing, not having it thrust upon you, you shift from a posture of victim to a posture of agent. You stop being someone to whom things happen. You start being someone who chooses, and that shift, from passive to active, from reactive to intentional, is the foundation of every lasting transformation I have ever heard of. This doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to climb a mountain or take an ice bath in a frozen lake, though those things have their place. It can start small, deliberately small. Wake up at the time you said you would, even when you don't feel like it. That is voluntary hardship. Skip the comfort food when you're emotional and sit with the emotion instead. That is voluntary hardship. Do the hard conversation you've been avoiding. That is voluntary hardship. Spend 1 hour in silence with no entertainment, no distraction, just yourself and your thoughts. For most people today, that is genuinely the hardest one. Every time you choose the hard thing voluntarily, every time you are the author of your own difficulty, you are doing what the Stoics called building the soul, not the body, not the resume, the soul. And that brings us to something I want to pause on for a moment, because it leads us directly into Rule 6, if you've been finding this valuable. If something in this video has already shifted something for you, please take a second and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this content reach people who might need exactly this. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, now is a good time. We go this deep every single week. Rule number 6, practice amor fati, love what is. Rule number 6, and if I'm honest with you, this is the one that took me the longest to understand. Not intellectually, actually understand. The Stoics, and most famously, Marcus Aurelius, practiced something they called amor fati, love of fate, not acceptance of fate, not resignation to fate, love of fate. Every circumstance, every setback, every loss, every humiliation, every failure, everything that was not supposed to go the way it went. Love it. Now, before you close this video or write this off as idealism, hear me out. Because this concept, when you actually understand what the Stoics meant by it, is one of the most empowering ideas in the entire history of philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That is amor fati, Not that the bad things that are thrown into your life are good, but that if you are the fire, if your character is the fire, then everything that happens to you becomes fuel. Difficulty becomes fuel, loss becomes fuel, failure becomes fuel, betrayal becomes fuel, illness becomes fuel, rejection becomes fuel, not because those things didn't hurt, but because the quality of your response, the choice you make about what to do with what happened to you, is entirely, absolutely unequivocally yours. Seneca wrote, "The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable." And the inverse of that, the mind that has made peace with the past, that has chosen to love what is rather than mourn what was supposed to be, that mind is capable of extraordinary things. Let me be clear about something, because I think this rule is often misunderstood. Amor fati is not about pretending you are okay when you are not. It is not about suppressing grief or bypassing the legitimate pain of real loss. The Stoics felt things. Marcus Aurelius mourned. Seneca grieved. Epictetus was a man who lived in chains and knew what despair smelled like. Amor fati is not the absence of feeling. It is the choice made in the aftermath of feeling to use what happened as raw material rather than as an epitaph. Here is the question this rule asks you to sit with. What is something that has happened to you? Something you didn't choose? Something that hurt? Something you are still in some way carrying, that you have not yet been able to love? Not excuse, not rationalize. Love, as in, what might this have been preparing you for? What might you only be capable of now because of what that experience demanded of you? That is not a question with an easy answer. The Stoics never promised easy answers. But it is the question that separates people who are rebuilt by their hardship from people who are merely broken by it. Rule number 7, build your character as if it is the only thing that survives. Rule number 7, the final rule, and I've saved this one for last. Deliberately, because everything else in this video leads here. The Stoics believed that there is exactly one thing that cannot be taken from you. Not your health, that can be taken. Not your wealth, that can be taken. Not your reputation, that can be taken, and often wrongly. Not even the people you love. Death takes them, or time does. The one thing that cannot be taken from you is your character. The quality of the choices you made. The integrity you maintained when no one was watching. The kindness you offered when kindness cost you something. The discipline you practiced when the world would have forgiven you for giving up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Naye siti tonda bi." And this may be the most important sentence in the entire Meditations. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Not think about being good. Not aspire to being good. Not post about being good. Be one. Here is what the Stoics understood about character that modern culture has almost entirely forgotten. Character is not a destination. It is a practice. It is built or destroyed in the 10,000 small choices that no one sees. The moment you choose honesty when lying would be easier. The moment you choose patience when impatience is boiling in your chest. The moment you choose to be present for someone when distraction would be more comfortable. Each of those moments is a vote. And over a life, over years of those votes, you build something, or you don't. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Notice the order. First, decide who you are going to be, then act accordingly. Not wait to see how I feel, then decide. Not act according to my mood. Not be good when it's convenient. Decide, then act. The rebuilding of your soul, which is what this video has always been about, beneath every rule, is ultimately a question of character. You can rebuild your mind by telling a better story. You can rebuild your body by embracing discipline. You can rebuild your emotional life by practicing the dichotomy of control. But what holds all of that together? What makes the rebuilding permanent rather than just another fresh start that fades in 3 weeks is character, because character is what you are when the enthusiasm is gone, when the motivation has evaporated, when no one is cheering for you, when the results haven't come yet, when it would be so easy, so understandable, so human to stop. That is the moment character speaks. And the Stoics believed, and 2,000 years of evidence suggests they were right, that a person of genuine character cannot be ultimately broken by anything the world throws at them. They can be hurt. They can be knocked down. They can grieve, fail, lose, suffer, but they cannot be broken because the thing at their core, the character, is theirs. Entirely, permanently, irrevocably theirs. And no empire, no tragedy, no diagnosis, no betrayal, no failure can touch it. 7 rules. 7 ancient, battle-tested, 2,000-year-old truths. Let's say them out loud one more time. 1. Burn the old story. 2. Make peace with your mortality, then use it. 3. Discipline your body to free your mind. 4. Kill what you cannot control. Obsess over what you can. 5. Embrace voluntary hardship. 6. Amor fati. Love what is. 7. Build your character as if it is the only thing that survives. I want to say one last thing before we close. These rules are called brutal. In the title of this video, I called them brutal because they do not offer you comfort. They do not tell you that you deserve ease, or that the world owes you a break, or that healing should happen on a timeline that feels fair. They don't offer those things because those things are not the point. What the Stoics offer instead is far better. Agency. The unshakable knowledge that no matter what has happened, no matter how far you feel from the person you want to be, the next choice is always yours. And if the next choice is yours, then the next hour is yours. And if the next hour is yours, then the next day is yours. And if you string enough of those together, with discipline, with honesty, with character, then the life is yours. That is the Stoic promise. Not easy, not comfortable, but real. And I genuinely believe, that every single person watching this video right now is capable of exactly that. If this video meant something to you, if even one of these rules landed in a way that shifted something, share it with someone who needs it. You don't have to know exactly what they're going through. Sometimes we share things because we sense that someone needs to hear that they are not broken beyond repair. Leave a comment and tell me which of these 7 rules spoke to you the most. And more importantly, what is the first thing you're going to do differently starting today? I read every comment on this channel. I want to hear from you. Subscribe to Wisdom of the Stoics if you haven't already. We go this deep every single week. There is much more to explore. The ancient wisdom is vast and we've only just begun. And until next time, remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, alone at the end of long and difficult days. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Go find yours. If you enjoyed this, you'll love our video on Marcus Aurelius, advice for people who feel tired of life, linked right here. And we have something on Stoic habits for managing overthinking that might be exactly what you need next. Both are on screen now. See you the